It's time to project Texas A&M football's starting lineup.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On Aggies. I'm your host, Andrew Stefaniak. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every single day. And today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOnCollege to get started. So, today is going to be a fun day. Was reading an article from Harmon of Gazette predicting the starting lineup. There are a few things I disagree with, a few things I agree with, a few question marks I have, and I thought it'd be really fun to run through this and say where I agree, where I disagree. So I highly recommend giving this article a read. It's great stuff. But yeah, so way too early prediction for Texas A&M football's 2024 starting lineup. And getting right into this, at quarterback, not much of a surprise here. Connor Wigman, and I agree with that. The question really still is in this quarterback room, and it's a pretty simple question, is that there is a quarterback battle. We're not going to go super deep into this, but is there a quarterback battle? We've discussed this before, and I think that the best way to describe it is that there is a quarterback battle. They are battling, but I don't think the race is as tight as some might think. I don't think this is going to be a close race. I really don't. I think that Connor Wigman is better than Jalen Henderson and Marcel Reed. Well, I often talk about how I think Texas A&M has one of the best quarterback rooms in college football. I think they're in a great spot. I think if something were to happen to Connor Wigman, which once again, over history, always seems to happen lately as Texas A&M quarterbacks, you're in a good spot thanks to Henderson and Marcel Reed. But I think that Connor Wigman is the best quarterback on this roster. I think your football team is best when he is on the field. Simple as that. I think that's the reality here. So if you are a Texas A&M fan, I think you need to be hoping that Connor Wigman is on the field all season for the Aggies. He's not banged up. He's 100% back from his injury he sustained last year. You need this kid ready to rock and roll because I think the duo of him and Colin Klein can be really, really special with some solid offensive weapons. So I am really, really excited to see how good of a season Connor Wigman has. I don't think he'll have any issue winning the job. Once again, I think Texas A&M has a great room, but I don't think he'll have any issue winning the job. And I am very excited to see the kind of year he has because I think it can be truly, truly, truly special. Before we move on to running back, we're going to talk about Texas A&M's regional draw here in segment 3. Break that down a little bit, talk about who the Aggies play. There's a team in the regional that some folks might be excited to see. So we'll talk about that here in segment 3 just here in a few minutes. Moving on to wide receiver. The 3 starting wide receivers listed here by Harmon. This 100% agree with still. Noah Thomas, Ja'Day Walker, and Moose Muhammad. So no issues there. Not one bit. Don't have any issues with that. Muhammad is going to be in the slot. You're going to have the other guys on the outside. Agree there. And then Harmon goes on to say other names to watch are the freshman Isaiah Williams, possibly Terry Bussey. And I agree with that. Once again, I've talked about that. And if that were to happen, I don't think it's a 20, I think it's a 2, 3, 4, 5 snaps a game type of thing. I've stated my case on that, but I think it's a possibility. And then Cyrus Allen, of course, could make some noise. I still think the more I think about it, with Jabri Barber going down, I think that Cyrus Allen is going to have a more significant role than we really expect. So I don't disagree with this absolutely one bit, everything he says here. So I'm really excited to see how this group shapes out. And I've talked about my opinions on the receiver room. I think these guys are solid. Can they be elite? That's what I need to get. I need that proved to me. I think they're really good. I think they're a really good wide receiver room. Can they be an elite wide receiver room that helps Connor Wigman elevate his game to that next level? That is going to be what makes or breaks this football team, and I'm really anxious to see how that works out. So that is receiver. Then we've got running back, where he has the starter as Le'Veon Moss. Now, y'all know my opinion on this. I am a huge, huge Ruben Owens guy. And I think that's one of my bolder takes this offseason, is that he works his way into the starting lineup. I don't think that would be the easiest thing in the world for him to do. I think because, once again, when I have talked up Ruben Owens, I have time and time again reiterated, Le'Veon Moss is really, really good. And it's going to be hard for Ruben Owens to fully take him over when it comes to who's going to start. I mean, he is really good. So we can't forget that. You just can't forget how good Le'Veon Moss is. And I think this is one of the harder ones. I'll be honest with you. I think that, we're going to get into linebackers, interesting here, but corner, but I think this is one of the harder position battles, because I think that even E.J. Smith and Amari Daniels, I think you have 4 really good running backs. I think it's going to be hard for these guys to separate themselves. So this is where Harmon and I disagree, but it's kind of I don't disagree, because what he's saying I don't think is wrong. You know what I mean? It's I think that the majority of people would agree with him. I think that Ruben Owens is going to take this thing over. And maybe it's not week 1. Maybe it's later in the season, but that'd be one spot where we a little bit disagree. But once again, I don't really disagree with this take at all. It's just I think that Ruben Owens is going to have a massive season. Then at tight end, he's got Donovan Green. Agree there. I thought this would be a position that maybe he'd throw somebody in that I wasn't expecting, a Watson or a Miller, or the Calhoun recent transfer. I thought maybe something like that would happen. So I was a little surprised that – not surprised. I just had a feeling that maybe this was me a position where he threw in a guy I wasn't expecting. That was kind of just the vibe I got. But no, he goes with Green, as I agree with. I think Green's going to have a huge season. He is battling back from the ACL tear. So cuts, movement, it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how he moves. How ready is he for the start of the season? That is definitely going to be a question mark. Lastly, we've got the offensive line. So at tackles, he's got Ruben Fothry and Trey Zune. Another name to watch he has is Demetrius Crownover. Don't disagree with any of this. I think that's a fair name to watch. I think those are fair guys in the starting role. And it kind of depends. There's some guys that I've seen others that don't have Fothry in the starting lineup. And then you can move some other guys. Right. This is one of those units where you have a lot of guys who are really who can play all the different positions except for center, most of them. So it's going to be interesting to see who works inside, who works outside. I think that'll depend on what happens with Fothry, but I don't disagree with this. I think that I just think it'll be interesting to see if he ends up winning that job or not. And then on the inside, he's got Armaj Reed-Adams and Chase Basantis, obviously, I assume, at the 2 tackles. The 2 guards. And then Mark Naboo as the center. The only thing that's going to be interesting here is if Kali Fui, the Utah transfer, is able to make some noise at the center position. I don't hate, while I still think Kali might win that job, I don't hate the idea of Mark Naboo at center simply because of the fact that he knows the system a little bit better. You got to remember, it's a new system. But he knows it just a little bit better. And at center, that stuff really does matter because it's a tough position to learn. So that is the offense. Let me know in the YouTube comments, are there any players there that you disagree with that aren't listed as starter, maybe, or do you disagree with me on what I said about Ruben Owens? Any of that, let me know in the YouTube comments what you agree or disagree with when it comes to the offense. We'll talk about the defense. I think linebacker and corner are very, very interesting. We will have that conversation coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. But first, I got to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. Listen, the Mavs have a chance to close out, get the brooms out on old Ant-Man and Cat and Rudy Gobert later tonight. Right? I believe the game is later tonight. The Celtics finished the sweep of the Pacers. This finals, assuming the Mavs close out, which, I've never seen a team come back from 3-0. This is going to be a fun finals. And I'll tell you what, I love Luka Doncic. I love the way he plays. I think it's hard to bet against him. I know Tatum and Jaylen Brown and Derek White and all those players over there in Boston are great. But, man, I'm telling you, Luka and Kyrie are playing good ball right now. And I think it's going to be tough to beat them if they're able to close out the Timberwolves. So that's a fun one. Check out the lines on that. If the Mavs win, maybe put a little money on the Mavs to win it all. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So let's talk a little bit about the defense. So first of all, at defensive end, we've got Nick Scorton and Shamar Turner. No issues here. I think this Nick Scorton guy's going to come off the bench. He's not very good, I've heard. I'm kidding. If you are an everydayer here at Locked On Aggies, you know that he is the best player in the history of the world. So another name to watch, he says here, is Shamar Stewart. And then Rylan Kennedy's a name to pay attention to as well. And I agree with both of those things. I mean, we know who Shamar Stewart is. Rylan Kennedy hasn't played as much, but both names that could have some serious, are going to play serious snaps this year. Like, there's no debate there. So that's defensive end. I have no issue whatsoever there at defensive end. I completely agree here. Defensive tackle, this is where it gets a little interesting. David Hicks and Albert Regis. So I agree here. I 100% agree here with this. But I think this is bold. Some folks I've seen that didn't believe that Hicks was going to start. But I'm going to be honest with you. I was really frustrated. I've been really frustrated if he doesn't, because he's just too darn good to keep off the football field. So you got Gabriel Brunlow-Dindy in there too. You got Rodas Johnson, who's a really versatile defensive lineman. You got those guys that are going to come in and play. And I like, Rodas Johnson because he can move around the defensive line. I really like Brunlow-Dindy. He was banged up in spring, but he's going to be ready to rock and roll. Should be, and he's going to have a really good impact. I think he's a player that has a chance to break out finally. And this is part of the problem with Texas A&M's defensive line. We have discussed this time and time and time again. There are so many good defensive linemen. It is hard for any one or two or three, to really break away. Even like these 5-star freshmen, we have 5 stars not playing really to their juniors because this defensive line is so talented and so deep. And listen, it's a really, really good problem to have. Do not get me wrong on that. This is a good problem to have. Not in any way, shape, or form upset about that. So that is defensive tackle. Now, this is interesting. I like this. He actually added basically a 12th man on the defense. He added the edge rusher. But I agree with what he's saying here. So it's obviously Cassius Howell. And he's saying somebody that is just, hey, you are going to fully be dedicated to rushing the passer. While Shamar Turner and Nick Scorton are obviously going to be getting after the quarterback a lot too. Cassius Howell, listen, you have one job. You have one job. And that is to go get the quarterback. Nick Scorton, they've got to make sure they're responsible for their gaps and they can't let running backs do their holes. And, they have more jobs. And obviously Cassius Howell is going to help in the running game. I'm not saying he's like, I'm not going to tackle the running back. He's not the quarterback. But his job is to pin your ears back, close your eyes, scream like the water boy, and go get the quarterback. That is Cassius Howell's job. And I'm excited to see how he does in this role. He unlike Nick Scorton, he's going to have to make that jump from a smaller school, to a SEC school, and how he makes that adjustment is going to be very interesting. He also lists here Malik Silla, who I think is a guy who could have a great season. When we had Jay Arnold on the show last year, he said the same thing. He was like, I like this kid. He's long, he's lengthy, he's strong. I think he's going to be a good pass rusher. We didn't see a ton of him last year. We didn't really see any of them. So do we see him this year? And I think that he's one of those guys that he, at any point, could be due for a breakout. And then he also lists freshman Solomon Williams and then potentially Anai White. But, he's still recovering from that the injury. So that'll be interesting. But that is the edge rusher room, which once again is, an extra spot here. But it makes sense. He's basically Graham Harmon, Gig'em Gazette writer who wrote this article, is basically saying, here's your guys that are there to get after the quarterback. And I think that was a great addition to this incredible article. So linebacker. This is the interesting one to me. He's got Terrion York, and then the most recent transfer, Solomon DeShields, the most recent linebacker transfer. But there is no mention. I want to double check. I want to read one more time. There's no mention of Scooby Williams. And that to me is really interesting. He talks about how, the resurgence of Damian Sanford kind of pushed out Alex Howard, which makes sense, but not a mention of Scooby Williams. So, I could be wrong on that one. You know what I mean? We'll see. But Solomon DeShields, he was the player, I'll be honest with you, when they went and added him from Pitt, he was the one I was like, okay, I'm worried that this guy might be the guy. I'm worried that he could take over. So that's linebacker. Interesting there. At safety, we got Bryce Anderson and Marcus Ratcliffe, the transfer Ratcliffe. Bryce Anderson back to his position. Marcus Ratcliffe, great, highly touted transfer. Excited about him. Another name to watch, Dalton Brooks. Don't disagree here at all with that. I agree with this 110%. Then at nickel, Jaden Hill. I don't disagree with this at all. Someone has got to play it now that Bryce Anderson's making the move back. And another name to watch, he says here, is Tariq Chappelle, who up until now has played corner for the Aggies, but could he make the move there? Lists Dalton Brooks here as well. So that'll be really, really interesting to see, hey, who plays nickel. I think that's another position battle to pay attention to here. And then obviously outside at corner, you've got he has listed BJ Mays and Des Ricks. Don't hate this either. This is the position, and he says, here, this was a tough call, but ultimately this is how I think it could shake out. This is a tough call, and I've said it myself time and time again. It is really hard to see how this is all going to work out. I love Donovan Saunders. I love Will Lee. Terry Bussey's coming in. There are so many guys that could play corner for the Aggies that it's really hard to break down who might end up winning the job. So that is going to be something to pay attention to for sure. I'm anxious to see how that position works out. But that's a great article from Graham Harmon, once again, Gazette. Uses a baseline for this way too early starting lineup. Do y'all agree with him? What I'm saying, let me know in the YouTube comments. I'm really curious. I think that's a great article. Check it out. Highly recommend going to take a gander at that one. All right, it's time to talk a little bit of baseball. The Aggies found out they're regional. We're going to talk about it coming up right here on Locked On Aggies. It is postseason baseball time for the Aggies, and they are set to host the Grambling, Texas, and the Louisiana Raging Cajuns. So the Aggies end up getting the number 3 national seed. They are going to first play Grambling at noon and it's Friday, right? Let me double check. On Friday, yes. So they'll open play on noon Friday against Grambling. You got the early game. I like that. You get your game over with. You win. You get to watch the other game, which would be Louisiana versus Texas. So some interesting things on these teams. Grambling, they played Louisiana, lost this game 12-4. I tried to compare it to some SEC schools. They played Arkansas, lost this game 21-1. They played LSU and lost this game 26-2. They got steamrolled by the 2 SEC teams they played. This is a baseball game. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. If you want to win a national championship, you need to win this game soundly. And I'll tell you, I'd like to win it in 7. I don't even know. I guess you can't. Did they do that? They probably don't do the postseason. I don't know. I don't know that rule, honestly. I bet they don't. But my argument was going to be, it'd be nice to save some pitching, but I bet they get rid of that in the postseason. I'll check on that. But so, I'd like to get up huge and save some pitching, put in some guys to just eat up innings that you're not too concerned about. Let somebody throw that hasn't thrown a lot just to eat up innings because you're up 17-1. Like, that is what you need to do in this game to save pitching. Okay? Before I move on talking about these other teams, regionals are all about, can you save your pitching? It is simple as that. If you can save your pitching, you can win the regional. The other thing, you have to go 2-0 to start. You go 2-0 to start, you win the regional probably 8 times out of 10. I'm sure there's a metric on that. Because if you win game 1 and win game 2, the other teams are having to play each other, use extra arms, extra innings to, with their pitching staff, to where when they make it back to you, they have to beat you twice, and they've already played 1 or 2 extra games, they've already played a couple of extra games using pitching. So winning game 1 and winning game 2 is massive. Massive. Have to. If you go 2-0, you're going to win the regional. If you lose game 2, you're in a really, really, really tough spot. Simple as that. So you've got to find a way to start 2-0. That's the way to win regionals. Then you've got Texas. They were 0-3 against SEC schools, including the Aggies. Texas A&M won this game in Austin 9-2. Texas, and the Grambling was 26-26 on the season, 18-8 in conference. Texas was 35-22 on the year, 20-10 in conference. And then Louisiana was an impressive 40. Is it 40-8 or 40-18? There's no way they play. Let's do some math here. 35. So 50, 57. Okay, yeah. So 18. Okay, I was trying to think, how many games do we play? My goodness. But and then 23-7 in conference play. So really a solid record for Louisiana. They're always a solid baseball team, but they're really good. They're a good team. Texas is a good team. I like the Aggies draw. I do, because I think that you got one of the not as good 4 seeds. I think that you are a better baseball team than Texas and Louisiana, but you still got to get the job done. And then we're not gonna break down a super regional until the Aggies have won the regional. But the other side of the regional is UC Santa Barbara, San Diego, Oregon, and Fresno State, assuming and hoping the Aggies win their regional. So we'll break that down when we get there. But let me know in the comments, how do you feel about the Aggies regional? Is it a good draw? Is it a bad draw? How do you feel with Texas A&M getting the number 3 overall seed, the teams they play? That is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Aggies. Thank y'all so much for being here every single day. Hope everybody has an outstanding rest of their Tuesday, and we will see you tomorrow.